April 25th marks the character day of a certain hunter connected to the White Sand Street Asylum, which we've been discussing lately, Robbie Whyte. Robbie, also known as Axe Boy in Identity V, is one of the 31 playable hunters in the game. He was among the first hunters introduced and has one of the most detailed backstories. This year, we received his 6th birthday letter, which reveals even more about him. Let's take a closer look. To give some background, Robbie Whyte and his sister Dolores were among the first children taken into the White Sand Street orphanage after a tragedy struck their family. According to Robbie's 3rd letter, they once lived happily with loving parents who kissed them goodnight every evening. But one night, everything changed, and their peaceful life ended. The orphanage, run by Creature, wasn't meant to help children. It was a way for him to make money. Once Robbie and Dolores arrived, they had no choice but to work in exchange for shelter. Creature forced Dolores, who was missing an arm, to either beg on the streets or use her to get donations because he thought people would pity her and donate more money. He exploited her disability for profit. Robbie, who didn't have a visible disability, was made to work in the orphanage garden. Over time, he adapted to the work and even began to enjoy it. Gardening and trimming juniper trees became his new hobby. Life continued this way until the church took over the orphanage and turned it into an asylum, which was later shut down. Years afterward, Alice, the game's protagonist, visited the abandoned asylum and found Robbie's file. That's where the 6th letter begins. The 6th letter opens with Alice looking through old patient records at White Sand Street Asylum. It's unclear whether these are the same records mentioned in Emma's 6th letter, originally owned by Ada Mesmer, or entirely different. While searching, Alice finds a strange case involving a brother and sister sent to the asylum. Most people only remembered the sister, Dolores Whyte, who was described as wild and frantic and carried an axe. She became more of a ghost story than a real person. As for Robbie, it's like he never existed. No photos, no documents, not even stories. When Alice asked volunteers about him, they grew quiet or nervous. Now let's pause for a bit and address something strange here. If Alice spoke to the volunteers, was the asylum still operating at that time? Or were these former volunteers? Since the asylum should have been closed by then, the timeline feels unclear. Still, Identity V's timeline can be quite messy sometimes, so let's set that aside for now. The only clue Alice finds about Robbie is a note in a caregiver's journal. It talks about a boy climbing a balcony and causing an accident. There are also odd rumors, like a ghost boy who rose from the dead under a tree and began trimming its branches. Curious, Alice leaves the asylum to search for someone who might remember the truth. Alice ends up at a street kiosk near the asylum, which is a small newspaper stall run by a man named Ernest. When she asks him about the Whyte siblings, he freezes. Eventually, he agrees to talk, but only if it stays off the record. Ernest remembers a tragic event involving the Whyte family back then. Some said it was a smuggling accident. Others believed it was a building collapse. Whatever it was, the parents died, and Robbie and Dolores were sent to the orphanage. He recalls seeing Robbie crying when they arrived, while Dolores held tightly to his hand. The orphanage had a dark reputation. Kids came out injured, some missing limbs, or barely able to walk. At first, Ernest thought the injuries were just accidents, but when he saw Dolores again, he knew something worse was going on. She had arrived scared, but with all her limbs. Later, she was broken, both emotionally and physically. she had lost her arm. Ernest also remembers Robbie trimming a tree near the orphanage's iron fence. One day, Robbie gave him a twig doll he had made. It was ugly, but sweet. That small gift sparked a friendship. Ernest brought Robbie candy and milk, while Robbie made more dolls and shared stories about his family and better times. Eventually, Robbie started to disappear. Ernest saw him less often. The orphanage changed hands, and kids stopped coming out. Instead, Ernest saw stretchers, bodies wrapped in cloth. Then one evening, Robbie appeared again, calling to Ernest from behind the iron fence. He looked scared and sick. He said his sister threw away his medicine and warned him that if he kept taking it, she wouldn't give him candy anymore. He also said that he was separated from his sister and hadn't seen her for days. Robbie didn't fully understand. He just missed his sister and wanted things to go back to the way they were. Trying to give Robbie hope, Ernest told him to sneak out, climb the wall, and run away with him. They could sell newspapers and start a new life. But that escape never happened. Soon after, there were reports of a violent tragedy. A patient with an axe. And after that, Robbie was never mentioned again. No files, no trace. It was like he had never existed. This is the same incident described in Robbie's second, third, and fourth letters and in his deduction quest. Robbie tried to climb out through a window, but the heavy frame collapsed and decapitated him. His body was buried under the old juniper tree at the asylum. A month later, Dolores, devastated by his death, went on a rampage, killing several staff members. Before Alice left, Ernest gave her one final clue: Somerset. Robbie often spoke of it, so Alice went there hoping to find answers. Alice travels to Somerset, where Robbie and Dolores once lived. At Juniper Tree Park, where the tree Robbie loved once stood, she met locals who still remembered the Whyte family. According to them, Robbie had been a cheerful boy, running around the churchyard and greeting everyone. While searching the park, Alice found something hidden in the dirt: a small glass bottle. Inside were candy wrappers and a faded photo of Dolores hugging Robbie. On the back, in a child's handwriting, it said, "If Robbie takes his medicine, he'll get a candy as a reward." Everything clicked. The medicine Robbie took at the orphanage was likely harmful. Dolores threw it away or took it herself, not to punish him, but to protect him. She didn't want him to get hurt. She was trying to save him. Robbie's sixth letter is heartbreaking. It shows the powerful love between a sister and her brother, a love so strong that Dolores risked everything to protect him. Sadly, it ended in tragedy. Robbie died, and Dolores, driven by grief, caused a deadly rampage. But it also highlights the bond of friendship. Ernest, despite his clumsiness, truly wanted to help Robbie and give him a better life. Sadly, his plan failed, leaving him carry the regrets of his action. Robbie wasn't a ghost or a rumor like some at the asylum claimed. He was real, a gentle, sweet boy who loved candy, made twig dolls, and just wanted his sister back. And under that old juniper tree, that's where all his memories remain. Though this story is tragic, there's still much I don't fully understand, especially about the timeline. But that's something for another day. If you have more thoughts on Robbie's sixth letter or want to add anything to his story, feel free to share in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. Silmina, signing out.